Recently, a planned terrorist attack against LGBTQ clubs was apparently thwarted. Authorities say it was going to take place in a town just outside of Detroit, Michigan. The guys arrested had practiced and stockpiled a ton of weapons. I'll detail those coming up. If you didn't hear about this, you're not alone. The story was quickly buried. And even if you heard that a possible terrorist attack was thwarted at all, you might not have known who was the likely target. One New York Times story only mentioned that in the final paragraph. When I began looking into this, I discovered something that speaks to a big issue the media is missing, that shows what happens when people become blind to extremism. And it led me to realize something. LGBTQ activists might be ushering in the end of same-sex marriage in America. Yes, I know how that sounds. But they've been actively working to get people into government positions who are polling at the largest opposition to same-sex marriage. I'm not sure I've ever seen a minority group achieve such big advancements and work to subvert them, apparently without even realizing it. And these groups are definitely already doing a great deal to hurt and endanger LGBTQ plus people in other parts of the world. I know all this might sound cryptic here, but it won't. I'll dig right into it coming up. It speaks to the dangers of building identity around victimhood. It also involves a town that banned pride flags on public property. And it speaks to Trump's nominee for an ambassadorship, a guy with a terrible track record of bigotry. Everything about this is being driven by media failure. That's coming up. Plus, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is going after the media, ranting about anonymous sources. And while anonymity is overused and misused in the media all the time, the Trump administration is in no position to complain. All that and more is coming up today on They Stand Corrected. Hello and welcome. So great to have you here. I hope everybody's doing well. My name is Josh Levs, and this is my podcast, They Stand Corrected, which fact-checks the news. You can learn all about me and my journalistic background on my website, joshlevs.com. You'll see lots of good links in your show notes, and that also takes you to the newsletter, which has a lot of information that comes along with every episode. That is also how listeners reach me all the time. And I wanted to tell you all at the top, I heard from a listener who is a paid subscriber to the newsletter. The newsletter is free, but paid subscribers get extra content and the ability to message me directly. Anyway, I heard from her through this other system. Anyone can message me through a form at my website. And she wrote me there saying that she couldn't figure out how to message me through the newsletter. That led me to realize I can now include a button. So within the newsletter, now, if you scroll down, paid subscribers will see an extra little bit at the end that includes a button to message me directly. Paid subscribers play a huge role in determining what topics I discuss on this show. Their messages are always the first place I look, and they send me lots of links. We have a lot to dig into today, so I'm going to jump right into Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. He recently went after the media. Here's something he said.
You sit in your air-conditioned offices or up on Capitol Hill and you nitpick and you plant fake stories in the Washington Post about kill everybody, phrases on anonymous sources not based in anything, not based in any truth at all. And then you want to throw out really irresponsible terms about American heroes.
Here's what happened. This involves an attack on September 2nd. The U.S. launched a missile strike against suspected drug traffickers on a boat. At that point, the boat was near Trinidad. The first missile damaged the boat, but there were apparently a couple of visible survivors. The U.S. then launched another strike that killed them. Exactly what the U.S. military knew and decided is unclear, and there are lots of unanswered questions. Okay, so recently, the Washington Post got what it said was exclusive information about that attack. The Post said that according to officials, Hegseth had originally given an order to kill them all, as in everyone on the boat. The headline in the Washington Post reads, Hegseth order on first Caribbean strike, officials say, kill them all. So, just now when I played you Hegseth rejecting this idea of kill everybody, that's a fake story, that's what he's referring to. Where did the Post get that from? This is, for our purposes here, an important window into how news operations work. I dug into what the Washington Post says in its story, and this is the kind of place in which details are everything. All right, so I'm going to read this line to you. It says that Hegseth gave a spoken directive according to two people with direct knowledge of the operation. Quote, the order was to kill everybody, unquote, one of them said. So I looked at this and I was like, wait, did multiple officials say that Hegseth said kill everybody? Or did only one person say that Hegseth had said kill everybody? Hegseth himself was apparently not in the room when it came time to decide about the second strike. But the Post said that according to two people, the guy who was in charge in the room decided to launch that second strike in keeping with Hegseth's original instructions. I have pieced through this. I can't tell whether the Post had two people or one person saying that Hegseth's actual words were to kill everyone. There's a Washington Post podcast in which one of the writers of that story, Alex Horton, discussed it. Here is an exchange from that.
You've learned that the defense secretary gave a spoken directive, and this is according to people that were actually in the room, and he says,
kill them all.
Kill them all.
But the plot thickens. The New York Times now has 5 unnamed sources, 5 anonymous people, describing what happened that day. They don't have anybody quoting Hegseth as saying to kill everyone. The Times says that Hegseth did order a strike and that strike would kill the people on the boat and destroy the alleged drugs. That doesn't seem to be a question. A missile lands on a boat, the people on the boat are probably going to get killed. The Times says he never addressed what would happen if the first missile did not kill everyone. So, did Hegseth ever actually say to kill everyone on the boat? We don't know. And what we have are these unnamed sources in different outlets. Hopefully, the truth will come out. There are some recordings and documents that can be produced, but even still, we might never get a definitive determination of what he did and did not say. If Hegseth did not say to kill everyone, then the Post screwed up by reporting that he did, based on either one or multiple anonymous sources. But while he and other folks in the Trump administration rail against anonymous sources all the time, it's important for you to know that the Trump administration also uses anonymity all the time. Every administration does. There's so much hypocrisy around this stuff. Here's a story recently about Trump approving a plan for peace between Ukraine and Russia. Quote, the plan focuses on giving both sides security guarantees to secure a lasting peace, unquote, the senior official told NBC News. That's one of tons of examples of this administration saying what it wants to say anonymously. Here's NPR reporting on this administration's cut to health programs around the world.
Speaking to reporters on background, senior administration officials said the goal is to wean countries off foreign aid.
All administrations do this. Obama, when he was in office, he used an old law to try to go after anyone who leaked anything. Here's something the AP, the Associated Press, got right. The Obama administration used the 1917 Espionage Act with unprecedented vigor, prosecuting more people under that law for leaking sensitive information to the public than all previous administrations combined. And while he ranted against anonymous sources, he also had people leak things all the time anonymously when he wanted them to. That is par for the course with presidencies. So, no one comes out great here. Maybe the Washington Post screwed up, which would not be shocking given so much else they mess up that I've talked about here. Either way, any administration ranting against anonymous sourcing while using them should be called out for that. One more important note on all this. If an anonymous source lies or is shown to have been really irresponsible in what they told you, like they could have found out the truth and didn't, they can lose anonymity. Their end of any bargain is to bring you accurate information. If they knowingly lie, they should lose anonymity, and the reporter should say who said it. If they made a mistake, you might not want to burn them as a source, but you also can't trust them anymore anyway after that. I'm not saying anyone knowingly lied here, we don't know, but anonymity is not supposed to be carte blanche to get away with saying literally anything you want. Here's why I bring that up. In a previous episode, I discussed a study that looked at the Washington Post and several other outlets. This study found that when it came to coverage of Gaza, the Post used more anonymous random people, not in the government, people allegedly in Gaza claiming all kinds of things. The Post did this more than all the other news agencies in that study combined. So, when it comes to anonymity, the Post has a lot of work to do. But all big news agencies do. There's way too much anonymity in the news, and most of it doesn't help you. Sometimes it's a really important way to get information, but the news needs to be sparing in how it uses anonymous sources. And when it gets something wrong, it needs to own it. Coming up, what I told you about at the top, a recently thwarted terrorist attack that speaks to a shift in American politics and culture.
And now I'm pleased to introduce our speaker today, Josh Levs.
We are blessed to be able to have a speaker this evening who speaks with a lot of heart.
An outstanding author, a principled and groundbreaking journalist, a really engaging speaker and thinker.
Broadcaster, journalist, and host of They Stand Corrected, the podcast fact-checking the news. Thank goodness.
Josh spent 20 years reporting for NPR and CNN, where he developed unique expertise on nonpartisan fact-checking. He has been called Truth Seeker in Chief.
Josh has won multiple Peabody Awards, Murrow Awards,
and awards from the AP, from the Society of Professional Journalists, the National Association of Black Journalists, and more.
His book, All In, was published by HarperCollins and won the Nautilus Gold Award for promoting positive social change. He has spoken to the United Nations, Congress, Google.
And of course, I think is very cool, won a debate at Oxford.
He launched his podcast and newsletter called They Stand Corrected to provide listeners with the truth in a world of disinformation.
Clearly, he is a much-needed voice during these crazy times.
It's my pleasure to introduce Josh Levs to you today.
Please welcome.
Please join me in welcoming Josh Levs.
I love getting out there and meeting people like you. It's such a great opportunity to answer your questions and discover more about listeners to this show and potential listeners too. If you're interested in working out something in person or online, there's a form at my website, joshlevs.com. That's JOSHLEVS.com. You'll find a link in the show notes. Just click bookings. Just outside of Detroit, Michigan, there's a suburb called Ferndale. It includes an area known for having a bustling nightlife, particularly welcoming to LGBTQ plus folks. It hosts an annual Pride Festival. Halloween is one of the biggest nights of the year in Ferndale. This year, that night could have seen a massive, historic massacre. Young men were planning a terrorist attack and were thwarted, according to the FBI. 3 young men have been indicted, and officials say there are others, including at least one juvenile, who have not yet been named publicly. The ones who have been identified are Mohammed Ali, Majed Mahmoud, and Ayob Nasser. They're all from the area in and around Dearborn, Michigan, which has the highest concentration of Muslim people in the U.S. and is an Arab-majority city. Here is a clip from CBS.
The FBI affidavit at the center of the charges said the 2 men and their co-conspirators were inspired by the Islamic State group's extremism, according to a 72-page criminal complaint unsealed in federal court. Mahmoud had recently bought more than 1,600 rounds of ammunition that could be bought for and used for an AR-15 style rifle, and both practiced at gun ranges, the government alleged. A search of their homes resulted in finding tactical vests, backpacks, AR-15 style rifles, shotguns, ammunition, and loaded handguns, as well as GoPro cameras, the FBI said.
It could have been even worse than the 2016 Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando, in which a guy who pledged his allegiance to ISIS killed 49 people. I've been reporting recently on how the media hides basic realities of attackers. Long stories about the recent terror in India and Pakistan literally don't mention that Islamist terrorist groups have claimed responsibility. Last week, I talked about the National Guard shooting. We don't know motivation there, but the media actively avoided even mentioning that the guy who carried it out is Muslim. In this case, the news had a hard time running entirely away from the Islamic State angle, but some did work to hide the LGBTQ angle. This one New York Times story, the only mention of that is in the final paragraph. Of course, the actions of some people do not represent everyone else. Unlike the media, I have enough respect for you to know that you know this. There also is radicalization among many U.S. Muslim people, and the news won't talk about that. Here's one example. 8% of U.S. adults overall have a positive view of Hamas. That is a massive number of Americans openly supporting a vicious Islamist terrorist group. But among U.S. Muslims, that number skyrockets to 37% in the latest surveys available. As always, I'll make these figures available to you in the newsletter so you can see them for yourself. Hamas doesn't just target Jewish people. It has killed people of all backgrounds and religions. It has killed Americans, and it is actively, viciously homophobic. It kills people who stray from its positions on gender and sexuality. When it comes to some Americans supporting Hamas, those positions are no deal breaker. In fact, they might even help win people over. In looking at radicalization and dangers to LGBTQ plus people in America, it is relevant to look at where Muslim Americans stand on issues related to that community. Not because it automatically leads to violence, not at all. Anyone can oppose certain things and oppose violence. But opposition to anyone being gay, or anything else in that alphabet term, can be one factor in leading people to target people in that community. Obviously, that's just a fact. So I started looking into this, and this is where I discovered something that the media refused to report. In recent years, groups across the United States have increased their support of same-sex marriage. That's to be expected. As something becomes normal, more people are used to it and more supportive of it. Except Muslim Americans. The number supporting same-sex marriage has plummeted. These figures are studied by what's called the Public Religion Research Institute, PRRI. Here's what they found. While numbers are up across the board in terms of support for same-sex marriage, among Muslims, it has dropped from 42% in 2014 to 33% now. And the group that has these figures, this group is cited by big media at other times, but they conveniently ignored this. And it's not just about same-sex marriage. Fewer Muslim people now support non-discrimination laws to protect LGBTQ plus people, and U.S. Muslims are more open to laws requiring sex at birth on licenses. This shift away from positions of massive importance to LGBTQ plus organizations, this is happening while those same organizations claim to be in solidarity with U.S. Muslims. This community has rushed to trumpet Hamas's claims as fact, and in general, all those claims of the far left. The lies like genocide, apartheid, all these things are so easily disproven, as I've discussed on this show, just based on pure facts. Gay and other LGBTQ groups are now supportive of all those big lies created by Islamist groups. They're supporting movements to end Israel, which is the only safe place in the entire Middle East for people in those communities, people of all religions and backgrounds. I mentioned earlier this year when I was in Israel, there were all these pride flags because there was about to be a huge pride celebration, which then had to be canceled. And then we crossed the border into Jordan, and night and day difference. This might best be summarized by a speech from this crazy person, an actress I've mentioned before. Her name is Hannah Einbinder. She was accepting an award from the Human Rights Campaign, which is focused on LGBTQ plus issues.
As a queer person, as a Jewish person, and as an American, I am horrified by the Israeli government's massacre of well over 65,000 Palestinians in Gaza.
That was even more than Hamas was claiming at the time. And of course, she got tons of applause. She went on and on with this false propaganda. Then eventually, she at least mentioned Israeli victims and got a tiny little smattering of applause. Listen to this.
I also mourn deeply for the 1,200 Israelis killed by Hamas on October 7th and the ongoing suffering of the Israeli hostages.
Boy. She's ashamed of something fictional because people killed in war are not victims of a massacre. In that statement that she made, she is factually mourning the death of thousands of terrorists. There are absolutely no question thousands and thousands of terrorists killed in Gaza, and she included all of them. Meanwhile, she does not talk about Israelis being massacred, even though by definition, October 7th is what a massacre is. So, the LGBTQ plus community has been increasingly embracing Islamist positions and claims, while at the same time, U.S. Muslims have been moving away from the core positions of the LGBTQ plus community. And this has concrete political effects. Here's a strong sign. Years ago, in another town in Michigan, Hamtramck, LGBTQ plus activists worked hard to get Muslim people elected to the city council. Then, when the city council became all Muslim, its first act was to ban pride flags on public property. Here was a report from local station WDIV, known as Click on Detroit.
And we start with breaking news right now out of Hamtramck. After hours of debate and hearing from residents, City Council makes a decision on displaying pride flags on city property. In fact, just within the last 10 minutes, City Council amended a resolution that would ban the pride flag from being flown on city-owned properties.
The station played clips from speakers who had asked the council to please not do this.
I relocated from California to Hamtramck. That's really far away. And I did it because I thought it was a diverse community.
There's also a video clip in there of two women getting up in front of the council and kissing, and there's an imam behind them who looks like he's going to faint. The members of this city council had every right to make their decision. This is the democratic process. They also worded the ordinance in a way that would stand up to scrutiny by saying they were banning basically all flags in general, outside of a few specific ones. But they made no secret of this being about the pride flag, which was the only one hanging on public property that would then be banned. There were all of these quotes from local activists saying things to these leaders like, "We supported you and now you're stabbing us in the back," and "There's a sense of betrayal." Well, these folks never bothered to take a good hard look at the positions of the people they were supporting for government positions. They brought in the folks who then got rid of pride flags. Now, look around the country. People who consider themselves progressive, lots of these LGBTQ groups, are rushing to support candidates who, in turn, openly and proudly support Islamist groups. I've been telling you about Mamdani, elected in New York. He has talked about his love for people who raised money for Hamas. Similar things are happening around the country. LGBTQ plus activists are supporting candidates who in turn support groups that are anti-LGBTQ plus. Now they might think, oh, this candidate will never do that, or we're getting promises that this candidate will support us, or, oh, this candidate has said all these great things. But just look at the groups these candidates support out there in the real world. Maybe Mamdani won't do something like this, but maybe he will. Groups he supports certainly want him to. This is what happens when people build identities around victimhood. To so many activists, it's really simple. They think we in the LGBTQ plus community are oppressed, Muslim people are oppressed, therefore we must be on the same team. Real life doesn't work that way. Progressives are missing this. The threat to the things they believe in is not just coming from the right, it's coming from the left with their help. This hypocrisy may be best summarized by a hilarious sketch from an Israeli comedy show. It's kind of like Israel's Saturday Night Live. It's called Eretz Nehederet, which is sort of a satirical way of saying wonderful country. They satirized Columbia students in a group called LGBTQH, with the H standing for Hamas.
We want to say hello to our BFF,
Bestie freedom fighter,
Abu Fatwa in Gaza. Salam alaikum.
Alaykum as-salam, and inshallah, Allah will kill you all infidels.
Love the headpiece, the all oppression chic.
Mr. Fatwa, how are you? Are you safe?
Oh yes, I'm safe. I'm in a tunnel under the Gaza hospital. Above me, I have Allah and 2 million civilians protecting me.
Community is so important these days.
I wish I just could be there with you.
You can come to Gaza anytime, and we will throw you from the roof, you homosexual dirt.
Do you hear? Bro, want to throw me a rooftop party.
They are so welcoming and inclusive.
It's funny because it's true. Almost 100% of Palestinians and Arabs in general think it should be illegal to be gay or anything else LGBTQ+. In a previous episode, I told you about a man in the West Bank whose son is a murderer. He explained that as soon as people found out that the boy he killed was gay, suddenly the society supported his son. In the West, LGBTQ+ activists keep talking about solidarity. That's not what solidarity is. Instead, it's them blindly supporting people based on lies and serving as proverbial useful idiots. There's another element to this involving the man that Trump is trying to give an ambassadorship to, a man with a horrible track record on bigotry. Coming up. Do you remember the little engine that could? Let's talk about that for a second. The dangerous polarization taking over our society is being fueled by the media. And there's a reason for that. The market rewards it. These days, if you join a big lie of the right or the left, it's like you are put on a bullet train that speeds to numeric success. This show goes against the market, and so it is a much tougher, harder path to grow this show. We need your support to grow this movement for truth, to help fuel this train up the hill. Here are things you can do. Yes, you can become a paid subscriber to the newsletter. That's helpful. Also, there are free things you can do. Rate and review this show on the platforms, wherever you're listening to it now. Everyone who does that makes a huge difference because that's how those algorithms work. Tell individuals about this show. Contact someone you know and say, I think you specifically would find this episode interesting, and here's why. You can also sponsor episodes and tell sponsors about the episodes. You can find out all this information in the show notes and at my website, joshlevs.com. Let's root for truth so our society can come together. And let's prove to the market that you don't have to join a big lie to succeed. With your help, we can get there. Thank you. I've heard from people inside the Washington Post that there are folks in the op-ed department there who understand the huge problems on the news side. And sometimes I see signs of that. The Washington Post does run some op-eds that go against the lies of the news department. I saw one a few months ago, an op-ed rejecting the false claims of widespread starvation in Gaza. Now they have one talking about the Post's own reporting about this strike in the Caribbean. Here's what you should know. That story that I was telling you about earlier in the Post included some people alleging that the second strike could be a war crime. There are legal arguments for this. One of them is the Pentagon's own Law of War manual. I'll put it in the newsletter for you. It says people, including combatants, may not be the object of an attack provided they abstain from any hostile act and do not attempt to escape. And one of the examples they provide is people incapacitated by shipwreck. Here's what the Post did not say anywhere in that original story. Most of the big media never said this in their initial reporting. President Obama engaged in so-called double tap strikes all the time. That is what an op-ed in the Washington Post now points out. It's written by Mark Thiessen. He's a columnist and also a fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. He writes about how Obama did these attacks against suspected terrorists. These were among the hundreds of drone strikes he launched in Pakistan, Somalia, Yemen, hitting a target once and then striking again to take out any survivors or other terrorists who rushed to the scene after that initial hit. Mark Thiessen argues that that was legal and that Trump's strikes are too. Anyone can come along and parse these things and highlight differences and debate legality. Were these folks recently in the Caribbean shipwrecked and no longer a threat, or were they enemy combatants who were going to try to upright the ship and recover the drugs and launch attacks on the United States? There are tons of questions, but the media should have reported about the actions of the Obama administration from the beginning. That is context. Meanwhile, I mentioned before the break that Trump has a controversial nominee for an ambassadorship. Amer Ghalib, the former mayor of Hamtramck, endorsed Trump last year. So progressives who had championed him were not exactly rewarded. Trump rewarded him with this nomination to be ambassador to Kuwait. But Ghalib's track record is filled with so much bigotry that Republicans and Democrats have been calling him out. He liked a Facebook comment comparing Jews to monkeys. He lied and insisted that he did not support something called BDS, which stands for Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions against Israel. It's a viciously anti-Semitic campaign based on lies. Hamtramck was the first city in America to vote to support it. He told Congress he did not support it. But then a local news outlet, good for them, the Detroit News, pulled up video of him at the time saying he fully supported it. The list goes on. A city official called the Holocaust advanced punishment for actions by Israel. And this guy, Ghalib, had expressed no problem with that. And he insists he didn't have the authority to do anything about her comment. But it turns out he did take action against other city officials who said things he didn't like. Despite all this, Trump is still standing by him. His ambassadorship is currently in limbo. It's unclear whether he'll get that post. But look at the reality here. He originally ran for mayor as a Democrat. He beat another Democrat. Many progressives supported him, and he went on to join Trump. I've seen people who call themselves progressive try to justify all this, saying, oh, these folks like him, they're just anti-war and thought Trump would end the war. But they're not anti-war. Right now, there are wars raging all over the world, and none of them seem to care. This guy, Ghalib, was born in Yemen. Hundreds of thousands of people have been killed in the conflict in Yemen, and there's actual famine there right now. But Israel fighting back after October 7th, that is where this community draws the line. Now let's look at how this comes full circle. In Kuwait, and in Yemen, and in the entire rest of MENA, Middle East and North Africa, aside from Israel, it is illegal to be gay or anything else in the LGBTQ plus terminology. People like to talk about money the U.S. gives to Israel, but they don't bother to find out that top recipients of U.S. aid include Afghanistan, Iraq, Egypt, Jordan, Ethiopia, and other nations in which same-sex sexual activity is punishable by jail or death. And yes, this includes military aid these places are getting from the United States. Just put 3 Arab nations together, they get 150% of what Israel gets in military aid, while having these anti-LGBTQ plus rules. No one's talking about that. Mamdani was photographed with viciously homophobic leaders, including from his native Uganda, and LGBTQ plus activists don't seem to care. Some of them say, oh, it's just a photo, maybe he didn't know. But I've looked into it, and some of these same activists care a lot about who Trump was photographed with. Somehow, all of this is just not a galvanizing issue for LGBTQ groups in the West. But Hamas, one of the most homophobic organizations on the planet, says anything, and these groups echo that while screaming solidarity. It is not rational. It's not based on facts or truth. It's based on lies. Lies that people are fed every day by biased, failing legacy media. This is how radicalization happens. As always, I want to hear from you. There are 2 great ways to reach me. The best is through the newsletter, and the second way is through a form at my website. I read every single one, and I want to thank all of you for listening, spreading the word, and supporting this show. I will see you next week.